I have the opportunity to do a fair amount of new construction inspections, and I'm going to start with saying that a lot of the things I'm going to share with you right now are beyond the scope of an inspection. But the reason I'm choosing to talk about this and to include them is I charge a premium for these inspections. And so the way I approach them is really what I'm doing is helping the client get what they're paying for, but also to help the builders, what I like to tell them is deliver the product I know they intended to. But really I'm creating a punch list and identifying things that either somebody's missing or is not getting picked up on and may end up causing problems later on. I'm going to try and go through this sequentially. Some things will be a crossover. So this is and all these pictures are from the last 6 or 7 months. So this was a pre-drywall inspection, and you can see how the backfill is already subsiding. And so, one, we've got poor backfill compaction, and that's just going to be problems going down the road. We also have this big dumpster right here on the edge of it, and we have a lot of construction debris. And so when I do a pre-drywall like this, I'm going to point out, hey, you've got poor backfill compaction. You already have a negative grade that you need to temporarily correct, as well as, get rid of all this stuff. And when you reset that dumpster, maybe reset it a little bit further away. This is a separate property, and the only reason I included this is I've never seen a bulge in the form like that. So the form is, that aluminum plate, and there was nothing wrong with it. It just had this big wart sitting out on the side of it. And so I just had a question for them to just ask, hey, how did the form blow out like that? And was there a purpose for it? This is the same property. This is in Arlington, and in Arlington, they do things a little bit differently. And so the radon rough-in for this property was actually just a pipe directly into the foundation drainage system. So not in a sump pump, it was just directly connected. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that they had that and they had the sump crock with the radon pipe in it. And so I only pointed out, just got to figure out which one it's going to be. This is the same property, just the front. The silt fence is not working anymore. Their construction entrance is failing, and so it needs to get cleaned up a little bit. This is another new construction property where I had the opportunity to go by in a rain event before this photo was taken. And so you'll see what's happening with this negative grade right here in a couple of shots. This is the same property. They're ready for drywall. This has been inspected and is ready for close-in, and yet we've got an active leak at the foundation. When I went to do this inspection, this whole floor was wet. The county's already been there. The county's already approved it for drywall, and yet we're taking on water. This is the same property. The issue here is that this is the final grade. In the plans, the site plan, the final grade was going to be higher and there was going to be a wall, but now it's not. And so they're going to have this damp proofing that's been applied here, and this is going to be the final look. My clients often say, well, aren't they going to paint that? And I respond by saying, what does your contract say? Does it say, painted exterior concrete wall? Does it say it gets a veneer? Does it say we're not doing anything with that? And so I just point out to the client, you should ask what the detail is for this, because in my experience, this is what it's going to be. There should also be a lot of straw through here to keep this mud splash from happening, because that stain will end up being semi-permanent. One thing I'm going to come back to is these downspout extensions when we get a little bit further in. This is a walkout floor drain where the rough-in pipe comes all the way to about 2 inches from the bottom of this trough. It'll work, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. That should be trimmed flush with the edge. This is that same property. So this is the rain event. So we've got all this mud coming off the property, which doesn't concern me, but is an issue as far as the county is concerned. This is that same property taking on water during the inspection. And this is that front end. So all that water is what's ending up in here. And that's our foundation. So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here.
The street, Pat.
You've got your mic open. Go ahead and mute it if you would. So this is new construction. This is the attic stair, and the attic stair can't be opened. It stops right there on the shelving. The client wants the shelving, but also wants the attic stair to open. And so a different stair, a telescoping stair, but there was no way to fold this anyway to get it past there. This is a renovation flip. So gut reno in DC. This is not a tempered glass window. Shout out to Rodney. This is new construction. This is a house where the trusses are not visible from the attic space. The attic space is a closed HVAC room, and in order to see this, you have to open up the panel, take out the insulation that's there, and then crawl around to the other side to see that this is just one of several trusses that have been either delaminated from their plates or something happened when they came off the truck. The other issue with this roof is that this is a flat roof that has a rubber membrane on it, but the trusses were all designed to be perfectly flat. And so the framing contractor scabbed on these 2x4s to change the elevation to the pitch of the roof. But now the roof load is being supported by these 2x4s that are toe-nailed into the truss. So not the way it was intended. And then obviously we're not getting support right here. So this is one of those 2x4s. And when you see it from another angle, I'll just skip to this. This is a insulated attic space, but this attic hatch right here is not insulated. It just had a piece of Luan screwed in. Same thing, no insulation here. Same thing, no weather stripping, no insulation. So this is back to that same roof structure. This is a separate cord, disattached. Same thing here. And then here's where, so this is the top cord of the truss. And then this is the piece that they've scabbed on from the other side. So now the whole load is on that 2x4, which is then nailed in sideways to the truss. And the framing contractor didn't see a problem with it. And he agreed to come back and fix all the cords. But when they fixed the cords, it wasn't really an engineered repair. They just sort of slapped a bunch more 2x4s on here without actually making like a gusseted repair. This is a finished house, no graspable handrail. This is a crawl space where there's a steel column with a steel beam, and then the hanger here just got torn off by however they were doing this, and so now this joist here is not supported. It's just hanging there in space. This is another new construction house. This is a truss that's at the end of a run, and this one was either first off the truck or last off the truck, and so it's broken. And this was the repair, to just sort of staple a bunch of 2x4s all around it. The builder's response on this was that this was fairly typical and that the engineer was going to take a look at it. Hopefully the engineer is going to take a look at it and engineer a repair that is not 5 pieces of 2x4 strapped around the side. This piece is supposed to be the structural piece. This piece and this piece were added to it.
Alan?
Yes.
Having been through this situation before, they definitely need a stamp. But what they got to do is need to put a piece of plywood in there with very specific sizes and very specific nail patterns. 2x4s don't cut it.
Yep. I'm going to be going back to this property in a couple of weeks, and my expectation is exactly that there should be a piece of paper here with the engineer's stamp. It should be stapled to the repair.
Absolutely.
And the repair should look like you described.
Yeah, it has to be done with plywood. That 2x4 stuff is non-existent for anything. It's
Right.
not allowed.
It's temporary at best, but that was the intention. Appeared to me that was the plan going forward. This is an attic hatch, just piece of MDF, no insulation, no gasket. This house was inspected and approved for close-in, still getting water inside. And that's it for these. When I do new construction and the hardy detail has been improperly installed, I'll include some of the hardy materials as a reference point so that there's no real discussion about it. This quick flash material is really great, but when you install it, on a zip wall, it's supposed to be fully taped. The builder's response is, oh, the siding guys will do that when they come by. That seems unlikely. We need a hose bib block here because they're just going to come right around it and caulk that. We had the quick flash everywhere, but then we don't have it here, don't have it here, don't have it here. They make a quick flash for these details as well. This is the same house. So this is a cantilevered beam pocket that's just not flashed, but at the other end of the porch, it's got the flashing. So on one end we got this, and on the other end we have this. This is overdriven nails on the zip wall. Zip wall, you can pierce the front of it, but you can't make a hole in it like that. And when you do, it needs to be repaired. This entire house has flashing on every penetration except for this one. There just wasn't the piece of trim right there, piece of flashing. Post caps are always kind of loose. They do have these little clips in there that are supposed to snug them down. I always recommend a little bit of caulk or glue or something just to keep it from blowing off. This is a renovation property where they sort of tied a new wall into an old wall, and this is the sheathing. I mean, you could see right through it. And this is in the corner, same thing, just nothing there. This is that same house. This is a lower level egress window from a bedroom that they were ready to go to settlement on this property. The house was finished. This is a cap that just doesn't have a flashing detail. Now this is like an extruded material, so it's not going to rot, but there is a post inside there, and there was no drainage at the bottom. So any water that gets in there is just going to sit inside there. This should have a block mounting on it. There's no way to really effectively finish that properly. This piece of trim is missing along the bottom here. So it needs to have some sort of finish detail there. Shouldn't just be open with Typar. And then I'll include those sometimes as well.
And handrails.
On that last one.
Yeah, if you go back to that last one, there should be some deck flashing, it looked like, too, in that location.
Yeah, you've got more than 3 risers, so you need at least one handrail.
This is all a porch. This is all one elevation. This is like a rug that's on the porch. This is all tracks or similar, all in the same elevation. This is not steps.
Oh, okay. It just looks like steps.
Yeah.
And you've got the siding looks like it's too close to the decking surface too.
Yep, and we'd want to see probably some flashing sticking out of.
Yes,
All
some
of that.
J flashing or something.
That zip wall will also leak where those nails are because no one ever seals them.
Yes. This is a core vent or a roof vent. It comes with these nails from the manufacturer. They tuck them in there so that the roofer will utilize those to adhere their material to the roof structure the way the manufacturer intended. They did not intend them to be left behind like this. This is a clue that this wasn't actually nailed in place the way it was supposed to. So if you get on the roof and you see these, they come out of the box like that. They're supposed to be secured with these nails, not with roof nails. This house was finished, except for the ridge cap. This house is under construction, and my only question was, how long is it okay to leave these penetrations like this? You know, 1 day, 2 days, 3 weeks.
2 or 3 storms.
Right. So these were all supposed to be bath vents, and then the plumbing vents didn't have their flashing on either. Now, all these materials were actually in the garage, waiting to be put on. And so it's even a temporary, I mean, that should just have a temporary cover on it. The plumber, when he made that hole, should have done something to at least temporarily limit any sort of moisture intrusion. We sometimes talk about pet peeves. This is one of mine. These are actually all from the siding contractor. There's a roofing nail here too. So when the siding contractor has their ladder jacks attached to the roof, when they disassemble them, they just toss the nails onto the roof. I used to just count them up and tell the builder that, hey, you got a bunch of nails on the roof. But then when I go and do the final inspection, the nails are still on the roof. And so I've started taking my magnet with me. And on some houses, I'll just go around and pick up as many as I can. On others, I'll leave them like that and say, hey, you got to have the roofer and the siding guy come back and clean up their construction materials. And the main concern is at some point, one of these is going to blow off and land in the yard, and a kid's going to step on it, or it's going to get washed into the gutter and then block the stormwater system and cause other problems. This is a gutter coming back where it's supposed to bleed out onto the roof, but when it's cut this close, it's just going to get jammed up. It's not going to function properly. That should be cut back at least 2 inches. The other pet peeve I have is red chalk. In fact, they shouldn't even sell red chalk unless you're like certified to use it. Red chalk is permanent, should never be used on a roof because it's just going to sit there like that. The only time you're going to use red chalk is when you're actually going to conceal everything that the chalk line is on. You know, that should have been blue chalk. More nails, nails. It's just a roofing detail over a front porch, but we've got exposed OSB. This was poor planning. So they either changed the detail on the front porch, but this roof line comes down and there's no flashing here. And when you come around to the underside of it, it's just right up against the sidewall of the house here. And so there's no means for dealing with the water at that roof line. So this is all just going to leak. I mean, it's got caulk on it right now, but that's not going to do much. This is a new construction townhouse development. We have one boot properly flashed here. We have this one. That's not going to work. This is a good example of the builder has never been on the roof. And my experience is most of the job site superintendent guys have not been on the roof. This roof wasn't particularly hard to get up on, and it had a bunch of other issues. That was just a
You're not,
dead one.
and you're also not supposed to put any mechanical equipment on wooden risers on a flat roof. That should be, you know, non-organic material, plastic or something else.
Yeah, for those little rubber pads.
Yeah.
This is the front edge of this building, and this is actually the next townhouse over, but this is all exposed plywood right here. And there's a roof drain that comes underneath it, and then this is all filled. And so anytime it rains, this whole section is getting wet, and there's no weatherproofing detail there. So right here, all that. They had a fall protection nailed to the surface, and so that's one of the anchor points. That's another anchor point. That's another anchor point, another anchor point, all with holes in them. This is a finished house. That was the roofing flashing for that vent. This one, the white material is not supposed to be exposed. That's actually a water-soluble glue that you would use when it's going to get covered by something else. And so the concern here is that this is actually going to delaminate over time. Spray foam is not approved for the outside. It's going to fall apart. That's also a terrible looking job there. This is that same roof. So these penetrations come in. So we need to have one of these, but we have these just sort of poked through and caulked in place. No kick out flashing here. Same roof. This is that same house. And then this is supposed to be a standing seam metal roof, but it's been in this condition for several months. And so when we got down onto it, this is what that edge looks like underneath the ice and water shield. this all needs to come off. This can't be left like that and put that new roof on there. And that was true on this side and on the other side of the house here. I mean, it was rotting. This is a rubber roof, and the issue here is that it's directly on the plywood. So you can kind of see the seams of the plywood. And then there's no blocking. Let's see my next bit. And then I'll come up again in a second. This is not such a big deal, but somebody went to the trouble to paint this one black. So this one should also be black. So painting PVC never really works very well. Is Rodney. These downspout extensions like this, so this is going into a dry well system. This is Montgomery County stormwater management requirement. Oftentimes I'll see this Y fitting flipped around the other way. When it's flipped around the other way during a real storm event, the water coming down actually comes right out the Y. That's not the intention. This is supposed to be an overflow if the system backs up. It's also a clean out. But when it's flipped around the other way, water just shoots right out. When I have this discussion with the building superintendent, their response is always either that's how we do it or that's the way it was drawn in the plans. Now, none of the stormwater plans have this detail in them. They don't need to have this detail in them. And on houses where half of them are one direction and the other half are the other direction, there's no real explanation for why is it one way and why is it the other way. This is a new rubber roof that's got a little dimple. These are some high nails here. Shouldn't see any nails. So this is that rubber roof where that's me standing on one side of the seam and that's me on the other side of the same seam. So there's no blocking under there. There's another one that I did that had H-clips all through there. You can't put H-clips underneath the rubber roof. When we had the EcoStar guy, he talked to us about nail here, not here and here. Same thing here, should be there. High nails, shouldn't see any nail heads. More nails on the roof, more red chalk. This one's, so I first went up on the roof here because this is a flat roof and I put my telesteps here, and that was actually a little sketchy. So the next time I went up on the roof, I put my little giant here and I walked up that valley and it was a little bit safer. But I was doing this house and this rain event happened. And so I was able to sort of see how well or not the roofing details were working. So this is water just shooting off of the gutter. This gutter is completely overwhelmed. This is what's happening. And then this is sort of after the event with all this water standing against the foundation at the front. Need some caulk on those nail heads. With the stormwater management systems, you'll see the site prep guy rough in these clean outs or observation ports, but nobody calls them to come back and trim them down. They definitely should get trimmed flush. I like this detail on the top, which is a NIDS pop-up emitter. You'll often see like a white hub from a clean out threaded in there, and that becomes a trip hazard and doesn't look good. But if this was trimmed flush with the ground, that would be a nice looking detail there. But these all should get trimmed. This is a lifetime boot flashing that's supposed to have a little compression ring that goes around it right here. Okay, that detail right there. So that's what holds it in place. And so this roof had 14 of these, but 3 of them were missing that collar right there. Also, this is a Da Vinci slate roof, and the only problem I have with it is that when you cut it, you end up with the honeycomb being exposed, and if you cut it where you can see it, it just looks like shit. This is a flip in downtown DC, so somebody got rented it but decided they weren't going to deal with the chimney at all. This is that same house. These are all penetration. So these are flashed properly, but this one is not. This house needs a different kind of flashing detail here. This house actually had water coming down on the inside when I inspected it in the rain.
No kick out.
Yeah, it needs a kick out, but it also needs like a flashing detail that needs something to bring it out, but also just something more right in here, because this is just the rubber laid up right underneath there. And so that's the, the Tyvek or whatever the membrane is on that underside there. More nails. So the siding contractor pulled off his ladder jacks and then caulked it with whatever caulk was in the truck, which was white, which just looks bad. This whole detail right here is too close to the roof. This is that house with the chimney. So the rear elevation was the exact same. There was no differentiation. This roof went straight back and there was no interior access to the roof. And so I went down the alley about 6 or 7 houses to a house that had a fire escape, and I went up the fire escape and then walked back across. I'm comfortable doing that. I'm not suggesting that everybody do that, but sometimes you got to find a different way to get up on the roof. And this is an example. If you don't get up on this roof, you're not going to see the flashing detail on those plumbing vents. You're not going to see the chimney. And if you're not going to do that, obviously you need to say you're not going to do that. But if you're not going to do that, you're also missing a lot of details that you can only see from the roof. These holes haven't been sealed properly. More nails on the roof. This is the same house. So this house, this has all been flashed properly, and then 3 feet over, no caulk. So somebody did it here, next one over, didn't do it there. Same white caulk on the ladder jacks. So here's one that's upside down. So when it rains, water's going to come down, and some of it's going to go down, but some of it's always going to come right out right there. In the attic, this vent pipe is not properly supported, which is why it's sunk down like that. When you walk over and pick on it, it'll just pick right up and it just drops right back down. And so this actually needs some strapping in the attic. This is a view from the roof where when the painting contractor was done ruining the roof, he went back and spot painted it with a color that doesn't really match. And so this whole roof really needs to be replaced. I'll include sod in my report. So here's a yard that got sodded, but all this sod has failed. That sod needs to be replaced. This is the roof where that rubber detail didn't have a kick out. And so this is just water coming down. And then this is just another shot. This is an H-clip underneath the rubber roof with me standing on either edge.
The zip wall says those nails don't have to be sealed, but they will leak.
Yeah, they say if it's just a surface penetration, they say it's okay. But if it goes any deeper, or if you have any real holes,
yeah, they're gonna leak if they're not sealed with liquid membrane.
This is a missing supply vent in the ceiling. So I'm walking through this hallway and there's no supply vent, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what's going on? And then so I took my infrared, and there should be a register right there. When you go up in the attic and you follow that trunk line down, you can see it goes to there, and then no register. This is the house that's ready for delivery. Has been inspected by the county. The hood is not connected. This is a pressure switch or a pressure sensor, but it's crimped right there, so it's not going to work. So in certain houses, when you have a cooktop with a certain number of BTUs, it requires a hood of a certain CFM. When you exceed 400 CFM, you need a makeup air vent. And so this is the pressure switch to get the makeup air vent to turn on. Now, even if this tubing was straight, the makeup air vent wasn't going to work because it hadn't been connected. So here's where somebody went back and found it, cut it out, but the wiring wasn't connected, and so it wouldn't work. This is another makeup air vent. This transformer is supposed to open and close the damper, but it's not connected. I find this all the time. This is one where the makeup air vent is integrated into the HVAC system, and so our damper is right here. But when you open up the filter slot and stick your hand or your camera in there, you can see that no matter what position the hood is in, this damper is not opening the way it's supposed to. Same thing here, not connected. First floor duct distribution, just pop a couple of floor registers open and take a picture, see what's in there. Obviously, this should just get cleaned out. This is construction debris. This is a gut reno with an addition, and they decided to make the old attic space, which is where the picture is where I'm standing, into a conditioned attic. So it has supply vents, it has a return, and then it's open to this unconditioned attic, which only has insulation in the floor. And so they needed an insulated sealed door or access panel there. This is a return that's on the stair landing, but the air handler is directly below it. So there's a straight shot from the return to the blower. And so when you're standing in the kitchen, all you can hear is the blower. Every time the unit's on, that's all you hear. And so this is more of a quality of life issue. Is there anything wrong with it? Yeah, it's sort of not best practice. There should be some additional returns, additional bends in that return. Try and get some distance between the air intake and the motor itself. There's a variety of solutions that could be done. But the main thing is that the homeowner, when they start living in the house, will be like, man, that thing is just noisy. This is the same house with the conditioned space and the unconditioned space. And so here's our return. There's no return on the second floor. The plan originally was that this was going to be a finished space. And midway through the project, they decided they weren't bringing steps up here. So had there been a stairway, this would be the return at the top of the stairs. But now there's no return. So the only return is in the master bedroom. But the 3 other bedrooms, the hallway, the laundry room, no other return mechanism. So the return is through the pull-down stair, which is sealed and shut. This is the same house. This is dryer vent, bathroom vent, bathroom vent. This is the outside. Dryer vent, bathroom vent, bathroom vent. Not coming through. Finished, ready for delivery. This is another makeup air vent, not connected. This is a mini split. This is the wall-mounted cassette. No way to clean the filter. This is all permanent. Nailed, glued, caulked. This is a chimney vent, a metal vent from a gas furnace that's in the attic space below with no top. This is the dryer vent. So this house is actually not a new house, but like 3 or 4 years old. And this is the dryer vent. And when you use a screened cover like that, it's going to end up completely packed with lint. So you can't use a screened vent termination on a dryer, but you're also not going to see this unless you go up on the roof. This is a high efficiency furnace missing its cone. Does it need the cone? I mean, maybe, maybe not. We got our exhaust coming out. This is our intake going in. We really don't want to get a lot of water going in this one. Water can go in this one, but really shouldn't go in this one. And that's what that cone is designed for. This happens all the time. The furnace guy hasn't come back. HVAC guy hasn't come back. The roofer's not doing it. This is that same dryer block. This is another high efficiency. This is the exhaust coming through this patio slab, about 3 inches off the ground. It needs to be at least 12 or above the highest expected snowfall. I see this all the time. So this is the manufacturer's packing film that hasn't been removed. And unless you point it out and list it in your report, no one's going to remove it. And then the homeowner is going to bake it in place and it's going to be stuck there. This is another floor duct construction debris. This is an exhaust hood. So the flex here is our coming off the hood, and then we don't really have a good sort of positive connection here. We really need to have that be one piece or somehow connected to each other.
That's an exhaust fan in the kitchen, a hood?
Yeah.
As I understand, you can't use flexible at all, any of that material, because it can't withstand, there you go, that can't withstand a grease fire. It's supposed to be rigid, smooth metal.
Correct. Yeah, that's the rule. That's the only allowable material for a range vent hood.
Right. Yeah, that was.
My understanding is you're allowed to use a very small section if they have to, if an elbow won't work, but they're not allowed to run the whole thing or anything. So.
Also, if you look in most of the range hoods, you're not allowed to change shape or size. I see a lot of them that are boxed in with like a 4x10. They'll go up to the roof and go to a 10-inch, or up to the ceiling, and then they'll do a 10-inch. You're not allowed to change shape or size because those become grease traps.
This is a piece of EMT connected to PVC. You know, is it going to work? Probably. Is it bad form? Yes. This condensate line drains into a sump crock that didn't have a sump pump in it. This was intended to be a conditioned crawl space. This is the supply vent. This is the same house that has TJIs for the floor structure, and this one just got cut out because this is where the return needed to go. More construction debris, missing cone, missing cone. I went to this house and this is the way it was. And the reason is this way is because somebody broke the knobs on the cover. So new house, new furnace, broken cover. This was an apartment building, so it was 12 units in the whole building, all new renovation, turn them in condos. The building has a centralized exhaust fan for the dryer stack. So there were 4 of these things, you know, in a tower. They've been running those fans during the whole construction process. And so all the drywall dust, all the wood finish dust, all have been collected on the dryer lint trap because the dryer was allowing all the air to move through that and out because that exhaust fan had been on the whole time. This is not going to work because it's not finished. We're back at the beginning. With new construction, the nice thing is that all your electrical and plumbing and gas is all underground, except for your cable and your data connection. Now, your cable and data connection can be underground, but it would be more helpful if the builder would provide that conduit. This is a new construction. That's not really going to work. This has been inspected by the county. Just an open junction underneath it. This is in the crawl space. Brand new construction, flying splice there. I was trying to figure out what these switches did, and I figured they probably do floodlights, but in order to make sure, I went up and I pulled the cover off so I could sniff it, and then I realized that there's actually no box. There's a box here, but it's not a weather box. This was at the front door. So here's the front entry. Here's our GFCI, except when you open it up, there's nothing there. This is a 5-way circuit in a kitchen that the whole time I was at the house, it worked fine because I was only operating 3 of the switches. And when I went to the 4th switch, I learned that my 5-way circuit in the kitchen wasn't working properly. And so a lot of times you're not going to pick up on light switches not working properly unless you're trying to run them all down and figure them all out. This doesn't show me that. What's that? This house, so this was an empty lot that had never had a house on it. And they subdivided the lot, so the old house was next door. And they're at the bottom of a valley. And they assumed that the sewer in the street was at an acceptable grade. And it wasn't until they had poured the foundation that they figured out that they were not going to be able to drain by gravity and that they were going to need a sewage ejector for this lower level, except there was no sewage ejector. And so they were going to have to retrofit a sewage ejector into it. This is a house where the plumber was doing a flood test, except he didn't realize that one of the shower pans wasn't sealed, and so all the water was coming out while we were doing the inspection. This is a clean out in the basement that should have a, you know, a better cover than the foil tape. These units are for the anti-scald on the tub. Their maximum setting is 120. In a lot of new construction that I do, I find that the hot water temperature on your regular thermostatic valves is not hot enough. It hasn't been tuned, you know, to turn it up to an acceptable level. So I'll measure the temperature of the water at the sink, and then also measure it at the tub or the shower. And, if I'm getting like, 115, 120, even more at the sink, but I'm only getting like 100, 103 at the shower, then something needs to be adjusted. These ones aren't adjustable past 120, but I've had a lot of pushback from people saying, well, we're not going to adjust it at all. It comes from the factory like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it's an adjustable valve. It says right on it that it's adjustable. And so it should be adjusted to its max temperature so that it at least gives you 120. This is a house where there's supposed to be a sump pump here because this is draining the areaway right here. And the day after we did the inspection, the whole thing flooded. This is an elevator pit. This is supposed to be the floor drain with a trap going over to a sump pump that's on the other side there. Is this a big deal? Probably not, but the intention was the elevator pit was going to have a floor drain in it that connected to a sump pump, and now it doesn't. We're inspecting this house, and this was in the utility room. And at first I thought, oh, this is, with the rough-in for the high efficiency furnace or the water heaters, and then they changed plans and they went a different direction. And it wasn't until I got in the attic, let's see if I can jump forward here, that I found the other end of them. And really they're just a conduit for future whatever. Maybe they should be capped at each end, or at least identified conduit to attic. One of these is a sump pump, one's a sewage ejector. I'm starting to see the larger backflow preventers and the larger valves on the sump pumps. You can tell it's a sump pump because it has the 3-inch vent for the radon, and it also doesn't have the domed top like that the sewage ejector has. Montgomery County or WSSC requires a circulator loop for distances over a certain number of feet. So this shower pump is supposed to be plugged in here so that when you turn on the bathroom light in the master shower, the pump turns on and starts to circulate water. You can do what they're doing and program the timer, but the intention was for it to be a switch circuit. Now it's an always on circuit or a timer circuit. This is a final.
I've seen a lot of those done with motion detectors as well.
Yeah, little occupancy sensors. When you walk in, it turns the pump on. I like that detail. This is a final approved house. This is the hoistway for the elevator, and this is the sprinkler head. This is a sewage ejector that just had a little bit of leak on it. This just wasn't sealed properly. It's actually not the right top because they're trying to run the cables in through something that they poured a hole in. But when you crawled in under the steps, you could smell the sewer gas. It also doesn't have a vent. And so when we were testing this, we kept running it, trying to see what would happen to the bathroom on this side. And the concern was that at some point you'd start to get a vacuum where like the toilet would just empty on its own because of the suction coming off of the sewage ejector. So the sewage ejector needs to have the proper top, or it needs to be sealed properly right here, and that really does need a vent. My experience is that most front-loading washers come with the door hinged on the left, and the dryer can hinge either way, but then it's hinged on the right. So when you open both doors, you have plenty of access to move stuff back and forth. This is set up for front loaders because we got that countertop on the top. But when you put the front loader in here, the washer is going to be on the right, the dryer is going to be on the left, and the doors are going to be banging into each other and make switching these a lot more difficult. This is also a house ready for delivery, and this, I guess, was the intent, though obviously not going to work. This is up under the steps, missing the sprinkler head. This is the WSSC backflow preventer in the sewage line, totally inaccessible. This is just our, I've seen maybe 2 times where somebody has put a new tag on or indicated that they've tested these. I always tell my clients that you're supposed to have this tested and repaired or replaced every 5 years, but that nobody ever does that.
Is that backflow on backwards?
Oh, he used to, I think he actually retired.
This one or the other one?
That one. Can't quite see where the arrow points. I always thought the arrow pointed towards the fat end.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The label's upside down, so it's hard to, let's see if we do this.
Bob, you're
Not
more
sure.
familiar with these. You've seen them backwards. You tell me.
Not sure from that picture.
Okay.
So another plumbing vent that's just not properly supported in the attic. This is it right here. This is a sewer clean out. Same principle though. This should really be trimmed flush. They make cast iron one. They make one with a cap. They make one that's actually adjustable. This just doesn't look great. Creates a trip hazard. This was the condensate line. So that AC system is a high efficiency unit. So it's going to produce condensation winter, summer, all day long. And all of it was just flowing into the sump crock here, but no pump. Those are Rodney's feet. Another circulator pump. This one had the plumber has strapped it in place so that you can't adjust the timer, and then plugged it into the water heater outlet, not the switched outlet, which is this one up here. This is a water heater vent, or not. This is a knockout that wasn't removed. So I ran the dishwasher and I noticed that the dishwasher was leaking. And so I opened it up and turned up the dishwasher is full of water. And the reason it's full of water is because the pump's not pumping through that knockout. This is hard to see in this picture. The next picture might show it. So this vessel is a freestanding vessel, meaning it has no waistline connection. It's draining onto the floor. See our water here? I didn't understand this at all. I didn't bother looking into whether or not you could actually do this. It just didn't make any sense. One, that the vessel tub moves around, which is a separate issue. And then two, if you try and secure it in place, you're gonna seal it. And because of the clearance here, it just didn't make any sense. This is a high loop that's got more problems than just that. This is a washer pan that's cracked. And I can totally appreciate that trying to set a washer inside a washer pan that is only marginally bigger than the appliance you're putting in it is difficult. Floor drains work better, or metal broke pans, they're sized properly. But this happens all the time.
Yeah, Alan,
Yeah.
go back to that picture. See the door there? Do you explain to your clients what that's for and how it works?
Sometimes. So when like this is where your pump reservoir clean out is, when you get all your nickels and screw heads out of there.
Right. And how to drain it, because the doors don't open on front openers if they're not fully drained.
I do not. I tell them to wipe it down and leave it open, but I don't get into explaining how to troubleshoot it that far. Most of my clients don't own tools.
Well, it doesn't take tools.
Well, if you have tools, you at least have some sense of what you're doing. If you don't have any tools, you don't have much sense. These connections, so we have duct seal on the sump pump, but not on the gas, not on the furnace. This is also in Montgomery County, where the stormwater requirement says that you can't take your groundwater or your sump pump water and put it into the stormwater system, because that has not been included in the calculation for the water event. This thing is a condensate pump. It's just a big condensate pump, and it's going to be discharging all the time. And so obviously this needs a splash block, but what it really needs is to be extended and dumped into that system. The builder's not going to do it, but you can get somebody to do it after the fact.